Delftware or Delft pottery, also known as Delft blue, is blue and white pottery made in and around Delft in the Netherlands, and the tin-glazed pottery made in the Netherlands from the 16th century. Delftware in the latter sense is a type of pottery in which a white glaze is applied, usually decorated with metal oxides. Delftware includes pottery objects of all descriptions such as plates, ornaments and tiles. History. The earliest tin-glazed pottery in the Netherlands was made in Antwerp, where the Italian potter Guido da Savigno settled in 1500. The manufacture of painted pottery spread from Antwerp to the northern Netherlands, in particular because of the sack of Antwerp by the Spanish troops in 1576. Production developed in Middelburg and Haarlem in the 1570s and in Amsterdam in the 1580s. Much of the finer work was produced in Delft, but simple everyday tin-glazed pottery was made in places such as Gouda, Rotterdam, Amsterdam and Dordrecht. The main period of tin-glazed pottery in the Netherlands was 1640 to 1740. From about 1640, Delft potters began using personal monograms and distinctive factory marks. The Guild of St. Luc, to which painters in all media had to belong, admitted 10 master potters in the 30 years between 1610 and 1640, and 20 in the 9 years 1651 to 1660. In 1654 a gunpowder explosion in Delft destroyed many breweries, and as the brewing industry was in decline, they became available to pottery makers looking for larger premises. Some retained the old brewery names, e.g., the Double Tankard, the Young Moor's Head, and the Three Bells. The use of marl, a type of clay rich in calcium compounds, allowed the Dutch potters to refine their technique and to make finer items. The usual clay body of Delftware was a blend of 3 clays, one local, one from Tournai and one from the Rhineland. From about 1615, the potters began to coat their pots completely in white tin glaze instead of covering only the painting surface and coating the rest with clear ceramic glaze. They then began to cover the tin glaze with clear glaze, which gave depth to the fired surface and smoothness to cobalt blues, ultimately creating a good resemblance to porcelain. During the Dutch Golden Age, the Dutch East India Company had a lively trade with the East and imported millions of pieces of Chinese porcelain in the early 17th century. The Chinese workmanship and attention to detail impressed many. Only the richest could afford the early imports. Dutch potters did not immediately imitate Chinese porcelain. They began to do so after the death of the Wanli Emperor in 1620, when the supply to Europe was interrupted. Delftware, inspired by Chinese originals, persisted from about 1630 to the mid-18th century alongside European patterns. Around 1700 several factories were using enamel colors and gilding over tin glaze, requiring a third kiln firing at a lower temperature. Delftware ranged from simple household items, plain white earthenware with little or no decoration, to fancy artwork. Most of the Delft factories made sets or jars, the cast stele set. Pictorial plates were made in abundance, illustrated with religious motifs, native Dutch scenes with windmills and fishing boats, hunting scenes, landscapes and seascapes. Sets of plates were made with the words and music of songs. Dessert was served on them, and when the plates were clear, the company started singing. The Delft potters also made tiles in vast numbers over a period of 200 years. Many Dutch houses still have tiles that were fixed in the 17th and 18th centuries. Delftware became popular and was widely exported in Europe and even reached China and Japan. Chinese and Japanese potters made porcelain versions of Delftware for export to Europe. Some regard Delftware from about 1750 onwards as artistically inferior. Kiger Smith says that most of the later wares were painted with clever, ephemeral decoration. Little trace of feeling or originality remained to be lamented when, at the end of the 18th century, the Delftware potteries began to go out of business. By this time, Delftware potters had lost their market to British porcelain and the new white earthenware. One or two remain. The Titulaar factory in Makkum, Friesland, founded in 1594, and a Koninklijke Porcelain Ateliers founded in 1653. Today, Delftware is the brand name hand-painted on the bottom of ceramic pieces, identifying them as authentic and collectible. Although most Delft blue borrows from the tin glaze tradition, it is nearly all decorated in underglaze blue on a white clay body, and very little uses tin glaze, a more expensive product. The Koninklijke Titulaar Makkum factory in Makkum, Friesland continued the production of tin-glazed earthenware. Delft blue pottery formed the basis of one of British Airways' ethnic tail finds. The design, Delft Blue Daybreak, was applied to 17 aircraft. Objects Gallery. Delftware in Pushkin Art Museum, Russia. Tulip vase, Museum Boijmans van Boningen. Delft vases, 1725 to 1760 in Musée des Arts Décoratifs, Paris. An Imri-styled vase, manufactured in de Griekse, Museum Geelvink in Lepinwi. A famille rose plate, around 1770, Musée des Arts Décoratifs, Paris. A ceramics workshop in Delft CPAUW. Painting of color Delft pottery. Tile gallery. Museum of Friesland, Leeuwarden, Netherlands. Biblical tiles, Museum of Gdansk, Poland. Toilet of Rosenborg Castle, Copenhagen. Farmhouse interior, Hoogland, near Utrecht. Kitchen of the Hospice Comtesse, Lille. Swimming pool of Nymphenburg Palace, Munich. Kitchen of the Amalienburg, Nymphenburg Palace. Reconstitution of the Trianon de Porcelain, Versailles. Victor Hugo's dining room, Hauteville House, Guernsey, 1860. Château de Grousset, Montfort-à-la-Marie near Paris, Tartar tent with 10,000 tiles, 1960. Bramer Castle, cow and milkmaid tile, by fireplace. Bramer Castle, horse and rider tile, by fireplace. Bramer Castle, windmill tile, by fireplace. Bibliography. Alan Keger-Smith, Tin Glaze Pottery in Europe and the Islamic World. The Tradition of 1000 Years in Maiolica, Faience and Delftware, Faber and Faber, 1973, ISBN 0-571-09349-3.